Well, Happy New Year and welcome to the CLEO Edge Podcast. My name is JC Polanco and I'm the President and CEO of the Council on Legal Education Opportunity. And we're so excited to bring you an entire new year of the CLEO Edge Podcast. This is our Emerald anniversary. So we have so many shows lined up for our podcast, so many events throughout the country. We hope to see you at our events. Consider going to our website today at cleoinc.org, sign up for our newsletter, join our mailing list, and consider making a donation to CLEO because every dollar counts as we diversify the legal profession. You know, throughout the year, we're going to bring you guests from all walks of life in the legal profession. We're going to bring you judges, elected officials, people from Fortune 500 companies, general counsels, leaders of not-for-profits, and we hope to hear diverse views from all walks of the legal profession. So today we have a special guest, Aliza Shatzman, who is the president and founder of the Legal Accountability Project. Aliza, welcome to our show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Well, we're so excited to have you on. You know, you've been working on so many interesting projects in this last year, and I'm so excited to get a little more information about some of the things you're doing at your amazing organization. But, you know, the important thing is for our students and our viewers to hear about, you know, what drove you to want to seek this opportunity at the Legal Accountability Project and to be the president and founder of this organization. We like to hear about what actually drove you to this and what were some of the reasons you began this organization. And tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you become an attorney? What drove you to seek those JD credentials at the end of your name?
So I wanted to become an attorney because I've always had a strong sense, I think, of moral outrage, especially on injustices affecting women. I was an undergrad at Williams College, and I did a couple different internships at legal nonprofits, including Planned Parenthood and the National Women's Law Center. And I was just really inspired by some of the personal stories I heard, and I wanted to make a difference. So that's why I went to law school. And then at Washington University School of Law, or WashU, from which I graduated in 2019, I really got the prosecutor bug. I did 4 different internships at DOJ, including one in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Illinois, and just decided I wanted to be a trial attorney representing the United States. And yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So did when you were growing up, did you grow up around any attorneys? Were there any attorneys in your family?
My aunt and uncle on my mom's side are attorneys. It's not something I talked to them about at length growing up, but it was definitely a career path that I considered for a while. That's
great. You know, you mentioned that you wanted to make a difference, and it definitely, a lot of the folks that we speak to in our podcast here at the CLEO Edge, you know, they share that they wanted to pursue the law because they wanted to change lives and impact the world. And it's so interesting that you two have that similar drive.
Definitely. I definitely saw the idea of becoming a homicide prosecutor as one of providing a voice for victims and advocating for them. It's not the perception of every AUSA that they are advocating for victims, but it was for me. That's definitely what drew me to the work.
Now, during your law school experience, a lot of our students here at CLEO, when they're in law school, they seek internships. So did you have any internships when you were at Washington Law?
I did 4 different DOJ internships, 3 of which were in DC. I spent my 1L summer in the Office of Vaccine Litigation, which is within the torts branch at DOJ. I spent my 2L spring in the Southern District of Illinois U.S. Attorney's Office. That was part-time during the semester. And I really strongly advocate that law students should do part-time externships during the semesters. Spent my 2L summer at ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, in the counsel's office. And 3L fall, I was full-time in the National Security Division, Counterterrorism Section at DOJ. And that was through WashU. It was a full-time externship, and then I took class at night. And I think those were all really valuable experiences in learning how to become a practicing attorney while still in law school.
That is so cool. You were laser focused on the federal service and DOJ. I could see that bug caught you early on in law school. Every single one of your externships was laser focused.
I was very intentional.
And that's great. That's great to hear. Aliza, you know, tell us where are you from?
I'm from outside of Philadelphia, Upper Dublin. My parents still live there. So.
Now, Philadelphia, the Philadelphia suburbs are a very interesting place. To say the very least, Pennsylvania is one of those interesting states, in my opinion, because politically, they're one of these purple states that can go either way, and it seems like there's like 5 states in one. I'm sure you witnessed that while in Pennsylvania.
Yes, definitely. I was born in Lancaster, which is a little bit more conservative. And then during my Planned Parenthood internship, we did our training in Pittsburgh and some other more rural areas of Pennsylvania. So I really got to explore the state. And then I volunteered for some campaigns throughout college and law school in PA. So got to explore areas of the state. You're correct that it spans the political spectrum and could be characterized as multiple states.
I'm from New York, and I often joke that we have about 5 states in New York minimum, right? When you consider all of the different politics throughout the state and different interests. So Pennsylvania rivals us as far as that goes. But the truth is that you're a little different in that it is one of those purple states that can go either way at times. But it's very exciting to hear your story about what drove you and wanted to make a difference. Something interesting happened. You finished law school and you pursued a clerkship. Aliza, could you tell our students and tell our viewers, what is a clerkship, and why is it that so many law students seek clerkships after law school?
So a clerkship is when a young attorney, typically fresh out of law school, maybe a few years work experience, spends a year or 2 working for and learning from a judge, either state or federal. And while tasks vary a little bit from judge to judge and chambers to chambers, most clerks do research, they write opinions, orders, bench memos. They go to court with the judge, and they assist with judicial decision-making, which is really important for both the young attorneys who get a crash course in trial lawyering from the attorneys who appear before the court. And it's also a valuable credential for their next legal job. I mean, the legal community kind of considers it the necessary checkbox for most future legal jobs. DOJ typically requires 1 year of work experience, which is sort of a euphemism for a clerkship. Most professors at law schools have done at least 1 clerkship. Big Law offers enormous bonuses for folks who've clerked. And so in the best of circumstances, it can really be an enormously valuable experience, developing a lifelong mentor-mentee relationship between judge and clerk. But unfortunately, the legal community has really not highlighted the worst of circumstances, which is something I seek to highlight through my personal experience, which is when judges have enormous and sometimes unchecked power over their former clerks' lives, careers, and reputations. There really a lack of workplace protections and lack of judicial accountability mechanisms within both the state and federal judiciary, leading it to be, in some instances, an enormously unsafe work environment for young attorneys.
That's boy, thank you for letting us know what clerkships are about and why they're so important. It's very concerning what you just mentioned, that because of the power that the judiciary has over its clerks, it could be actually susceptible to some of the issues that a lot of folks deal with in the private and public sector outside of the courts. And you mentioned the kind of power that could really shape and controls a future attorney's career. Is that something that happened to you, Aliza?
It is, and I want to address 2 things there. The first is that, yes, while harassment, gender discrimination, retaliation, other forms of misconduct also occur in other legal workplaces in both the private and public sector, the federal judiciary is exempt from Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, meaning that law clerks and also federal public defenders who are harassed by the most powerful members of our profession, judges, have no legal recourse for harms done to their lives, careers, reputations, and future earning potentials. The Judiciary Accountability Act, or JAA, would address this outrageous lack of workplace protections, and is something for which I advocate. So that's an important thing to consider. Judges also have enormous power over their former clerks' lives and their current clerks' lives. A judicial chambers is a very isolated work environment. It's a couple clerks, young attorneys, perhaps a judicial assistant, and a judge, working long hours behind locked doors, in close quarters, in stressful circumstances. There is really no place for a law clerk to go to seek assistance, reassignment, legal counsel when they are mistreated. And what keeps law clerks silent in the face of mistreatment is the understanding that a judge's lukewarm reference, let alone a negative reference, can have enormous long-term damage to their careers. It's something I personally experienced, and that's part of the reason I speak out on this issue so frequently and why I make some pretty strong statements when I talk about these issues.
Well, what's interesting is that your experience and what you've seen happen with clerks and what you've experienced happen with clerks motivated you to start this organization, the Legal Accountability Project. And I know that you've been doing a lot of work as far as testifying before government and speaking to law schools and colleges around the country. Tell us about the organization. Why did you start it? What are some of the things that you've seen since starting the organization? And what does the future hold for the Legal Accountability Project? I know you're working on a lot of things.
There's a lot of questions in there.
I know.
The Legal Accountability Project basically seeks to ensure that law clerks have a positive clerkship experience and then extend support and resources to those who do not. I founded this organization because of my personal experience with gender discrimination, harassment, and retaliation during and after my clerkship. And so I really think of the nonprofit as the resource I wish existed as a WashU law student applying for a clerkship, a law clerk facing mistreatment and unsure where to go for help, and then a former clerk engaging in the formal judicial complaint process. And it's really premised on addressing both a lack of transparency in the clerkship application process, as well as a lack of accountability in our judiciary. And I do kind of want to back up and kind of explain the circumstances that led me to found the nonprofit, long and winding as the story may be.
No, it's exciting. Aliza, I ask you these questions because there's so many of our CLEO students and so many of them of folks that I knew at Fordham Law, where I graduated, that couldn't wait to get a clerkship, and it's so popular among law students that I hope that as they listen to your story and the Legal Accountability Project, they become aware of some of the laws out there that are being proposed that will help them in situations like this. And Aliza, quite frankly, you're working on getting protections for folks that don't have them. So that's why I'm so interested and I ask these questions. I'm sorry, so many back to back, but very fascinating work you're doing.
What led me to start the organization? As I said, I graduated from WashU Law in 2019, and I aspired to be a homicide AUSA in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. So I decided to clerk in DC Superior Court during the 2019 to 2020 term because I knew that DC AUSAs appeared before DC Superior Court judges. And I knew that I would get a crash course in trial lawyering from the attorneys who appeared before the court. And I started this clerkship in August of 2019, just very young, eager, aspiring homicide AUSA. And unfortunately, beginning just weeks into this clerkship, the judge for whom I clerked began to harass me and discriminate against me because of my gender. He would kick me out of the courtroom and tell me that I made him uncomfortable and that he just felt more comfortable with my male co-clerk. He told me that I was bossy, aggressive, nasty, and that I had personality issues. The day I found out that I passed the DC bar exam, so big day in my life, he called me into his inner chambers, got in my face, and said, "You're bossy. And I know bossy because my wife is bossy." And I just remember being devastated. I mean, I cried myself to sleep at night. I cried on the walk to work in the morning. I wished I could be reassigned to another judge. My workplace in the DC courts did not have an employee dispute resolution or EDR plan in place that might have enabled that to happen. I confided in some attorney mentors who advised me to stick it out, and I knew that I needed a year of work experience to be eligible to work as a prosecutor in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. We eventually transitioned to remote work during the pandemic, and I moved back to Philly to stay with my parents and work remotely. The judge basically ignored me for 6 weeks before he called me up and told me he was ending my clerkship early because I made him uncomfortable, lacked respect for him, but he didn't want to get into it. And then he hung up on me. So I reached out to DC Courts HR, and they said there was nothing they could do. HR does not regulate judges. judges and law clerks have a unique relationship. Then they asked me whether I knew that I was an at-will employee. This was all really devastating. I connected with some DC Court's judges who directed me to the commission where I ultimately filed my complaint. I drafted that in May of 2020, but I decided to wait to file it till I had a new job because I was already worried the judge would retaliate against me. Moved back to DC in the summer of 2021 after landing my dream job in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. And I was 2 weeks into training at the USAO when I received some really devastating news that altered the course of my life. I was told the judge had made negative statements about me during my background investigation, that I wouldn't be able to obtain a security clearance, and that my job offer was being revoked. And then a couple days later, the USAO invited me to interview for a different job, and they revoked that offer too, based on the judge's same negative reference. I was 2 years into my legal career. This judge seemed to have enormous and unchecked power to ruin my reputation, destroy my career, prevent me from ever obtaining my dream job. So I filed a complaint with the DC Commission on Judicial Disabilities and Tenure. That is the regulatory body for DC judges who are Senate confirmed. I hired attorneys, and in the summer and fall of 2021, I participated in the investigation into the now former judge. And we were partway through that investigation, which was devastatingly painful, and where the investigator said things to me like, "You must have done something wrong. The judge hired you in the first place." When I found out the judge was on administrative leave, pending an investigation into other misconduct, at the time he'd filed the negative reference about me. And the USAO was really not alerted of the circumstances of that until January 2022, pursuant to the terms of our private settlement agreement. Separate from anything the judiciary could or would do for a law clerk, the former judge issued a clarifying statement to the USAO, addressing some but not all of his outrageous claims about me. But by then, the damage had been done. It had been way too long. I was pretty much blackballed from what I thought was my dream job. And when I was going through the judicial complaint process in the summer of 2021, I became aware of the Judiciary Accountability Act, or JAA. That is legislation that would extend Title VII protections to law clerks. Currently, folks like me cannot sue our harassers and seek damages for harms done to our lives. I reached out to House and Senate offices, both Dems and Republicans, to advocate for the legislation, to advocate for an amendment to cover the DC courts, which is where I clerked, currently not covered under the bill. And when a House Judiciary Subcommittee hearing happened in March 2022, I was invited to submit written testimony, sharing a condensed version of the story I've just shared with you and advocating for the legislation.
That's actually available online, right? We could actually read that testimony. Where can we get that testimony?
We can put it in the show notes. It's on house.gov. We'll put it in the show notes.
Our producer will put it up. Curly will take care of that for us. So, you know, it's so interesting. I'm sorry you went through this experience. I'm sure it could have jaded some folks, like so many things in our careers. These things happen, and it's like a complete nightmare. Two things could happen. You could shut down and get out of the legal profession, or you could do something about it. And you decided to do something about it with the Legal Accountability Project.
Yes. I definitely consider myself kind of law adjacent at this point, but really seeking to make a difference in a variety of areas to address issues that I personally experienced. And I think it's very important to be advocating based on my personal experience. I mean, what I like to say is that my experience is not rare, but it is one that is rarely shared publicly due to the culture of silence and fear surrounding the judiciary. There is a real problem in the legal community of deifying judges and disbelieving law clerks. Yeah. And whether we are talking about the federal judiciary or state courts, law clerks rarely file complaints against judges. They are fearful of reputational harm in the legal community, retaliation by the judges who mistreated them. When I think about my own experience deciding to file a complaint, speak publicly, it was a lot of female attorneys who told me the right professional decision would have been not to report, and that speaking publicly would tarnish my reputation. And I really seek to combat that toxic culture of silence. I think
Aliza, I'm sorry to interrupt, but in after the Me Too movement, you would assume that the spirit of finally believing women speaking up for decades of this type of treatment would have caught on in the judiciary, but you didn't see that. No. You didn't see that at all.
No, I don't think Me Too has fully reached the judiciary yet. And I want to clarify, it's not just women who are mistreated in clerkships. It's a lot of historically marginalized groups, women, non-white folks, LGBTQ folks, first-gen students. But I also receive a lot of outreach from straight white men talking about their experiences of mistreatment by either male or female judges. And so it really spans the spectrum of identities.
Interesting.
And I think it's really a pervasive and unaddressed issue in both the state and federal courts. And law clerks simply cannot wait another year for workplace protections. They cannot wait another year for Title VII protections. And the first step toward changing the culture is really encouraging more people to share their experiences publicly, which is one of numerous things I seek to do with the Legal Accountability Project. Knowing that is really an uphill battle, and that there are forces in the legal community that would prefer law clerks not be speaking publicly about judges who mistreated them. Yep. I think that's very sad that the legal community is that way.
Well, I'm sorry that you've experienced some of that, but I'm so happy to hear your story and to hear some of the things that you're working on to change lives and to change the careers of other clerks that may go through that. We're going to take a small break. When we get back, we're going to have our lightning round. And I want to hear a little more of the future of the Legal Accountability Project and how can some people get involved in the good work Aliza is working on. Right, so we'll be right back. And welcome back to the CLEO Edge Podcast. As you know, the lightning round is my favorite part of the show. This is where we ask our guests just a few questions, and we get to hear what they love the most, their favorite movie. Very excited about it. Aliza, so here we go. This is the lightning round, and this is where students get to hear from attorneys and realize that we're just regular people just like them. Right? So, so question one, iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Really? Okay. Now, what is your favorite social media outlet, favorite social media platform? Is it Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat?
None of the above.
What's that? So what is it?
I like Twitter, despite the Twitter controversy, but I get the most engagement with LinkedIn, honestly.
All right, cool. Now, what is your favorite movie?
Sex and the City, or maybe Sex and the City 2. Yeah, old school.
Old school. And what's your favorite sports team? I know you're from Philly.
Oh gosh. Maybe my Williams College teams. That's where I went to undergrad. We have some good sports teams, and I was a golfer at Williams. So
okay. And last question: what is the best place for a Philly cheesesteak?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Really? Oh, from the suburbs of Philadelphia, they're going to disown you, Aliza.
Yeah.
Okay, so favorite restaurant?
I have no idea.
Scared?
Being vegan is a little bit limiting in terms of.
Oh, so you're a vegan too, Aliza. We got to have a conversation one day about vegan. I know it's a lot of my friends have become vegans and they've abandoned me at the steakhouses.
I don't try to convert anybody, so I suppose other people's right to eat meat, but yeah. All
right. Well, thank you for sharing and participating in our lightning round. Aliza, we want to get back to the work that you're doing, and we want to hear more about some of the projects that you're working on. And as you speak to us, one of the main concerns that we have here at CLEO, and myself as president and CEO of the organization, is we're constantly keeping our eyes on the prize, and we want to make sure that clerkships and law schools are diversified. So, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is about your work with diversity as well. So talk to us about some of the things that you're working on now, actual projects.
So the Legal Accountability Project's main initiative this year is a centralized clerkships reporting database, which will democratize information about judges, ensuring that prospective clerkship applicants, students, and alums have as much information about as many judges as possible before they make what is a really important decision about their careers, especially considering the outsized influence that a clerkship and your relationship with your judge will have on your future career prospects. I speak with a lot of students, and the conversation goes like this. So you want a clerk? Great. How will you avoid judges who harass their clerks? Some students say they'd ask somebody. Who are you going to ask? Some law school clerkship directors and deans say, we tell students to, quote, do their research about judges before applying. But again, what research are you going to do about judges who mistreat their clerks? And I hear lots of crazy stories about the types of research students do, anonymous blogs, sharing information between alums of a few well-resourced schools and everybody else, really inefficient, ineffective ways to run the clerkship application process. A handful of law schools do a post-clerkship survey of their alums. Some, but not all, keep this in a searchable internal database. Law schools understand these do not capture the scope of the problem because law clerks who face mistreatment are notoriously unwilling to report that back to their law schools. I hear from law clerks who face mistreatment every single day, especially from the handful of schools that do the post-clerkship survey, thanking me, confiding in me, telling me they would not report back to their law schools. And if you think of the administration at your law school alma mater, deans and clerkship directors, probably lovely people. But if you are harassed by a life tenure judge, probably not your first call. So we have created a clerkships database and a post-clerkship survey that asks better questions, that increases transparency in the really opaque application process, and will empower more diverse students to pursue clerkships. Diverse students, women, LGBTQ folks, non-white students, first-gen folks, reach out to me every day to convey that they would clerk if they had information about judges. They do not have this information, so they choose not to apply. We are sending the post-clerkship survey to alums, not just at the participating law schools, but to a wide variety of law clerk alumni. They'll create an account with us, report on their clerkship, good, bad, medium. We want to hear everything. We ask lots of different questions you'd want to know before clerking. Information you would get to know if you pursued other private or public sector employment. Mistreatment is definitely something we seek to capture in a way law schools have historically not done. But it's also, how does the judge provide feedback? Do I get writing and courtroom experience? Can I take vacation? How many co-clerks will I have? All kinds of stuff you might want to know.
Very interesting. So almost like, Aliza, almost like a glass door, rate my professor.
Yelp for judges. My attorneys call it Yelp for judges, so I know I'm okay doing that.
Yeah, that's it. That's so interesting. And it opens up a whole new world because as more and more folks that finish law school are looking for clerkships, what better way than to finally go somewhere that they can access a database? Now that database is your goal for 2023.
It is. It is. This is based on my personal experience, my numerous conversations with law students, law clerks, and law schools, the best way on the front end to ensure positive clerkship experiences, to protect law clerks from workplace mistreatment. There are, as we talked about before, so few workplace protections in the judiciary. It is enormously important for law clerks to be able to identify judges who will create exemplary work environments, and finally, figure out how to avoid the judges who mistreat their clerks.
Interesting. Now, Aliza, is there a place where our viewers can check the percentage of diverse clerks? Is there any database where we can check what percentage of clerks in these courts are people of color and historically marginalized groups?
Great question. There is a real dearth of data in this space that enables the judiciary to get away with various types of misconduct as well as non-diverse hiring. The National Association for Law Placement, or NALP, does some survey data in this space. I think the most recent data showed that 79% of federal clerks were white and male. Now, the NALP data only surveys people clerking immediately out of law school, so their data is not representative of the full scope of clerks. What we really need is the federal judiciary, the U.S. courts, to collect and report annual data on diversity or lack thereof in the clerkship workplace. State courts should be collecting and reporting this data as well. Federal judiciary has been notoriously unwilling to do that. That is one thing the Judiciary Accountability Act would finally require them to do. But what we know anecdotally is that while diverse groups, including women and non-white folks, represent at least half, well, women represent more than half of law school attendees, we get into the ranks of clerkships, very underrepresented. And we think, and it creates a larger pipeline issue. When we think about who rises to and through the profession, to and through the judiciary, it's a lot of white men and a lot of white male clerks writing and researching those decisions. When we think about decisions we don't like so much, whether that's because of differing politics or something else, the lack of diversity in our judiciary creates larger issues of judicial accountability, larger issues of a lack of diversity, and we need to address them at the grassroots. It starts with diversifying the clerkship applicant pool. It starts with infusing transparency into the really opaque clerkship application process. It does not need to be this way. Law students should be able to access information about judges and clerkships, and it is really outrageous that law schools do not provide this information to students.
That's so interesting, Aliza. You know, I want to, we've heard from you the concerns about what happens when you have unchecked power. And unchecked power is always concerning for us, especially in the diversity space. But I do know that there are some students and some clerks have had positive experiences. You know, have you heard of these experiences, and why would you still encourage young, law school graduates to pursue clerkships today, even after what you've gone through and starting this important program and not-for-profit and now working on this database? Can you let us, now that we have a couple of minutes left, can you tell us, why would you still encourage them to pursue this? And I think that's an important part of our discussion.
It's a good question. So the database and the other initiatives that the Legal Accountability Project works on seek to highlight positive experiences and judges who are excellent mentors as much as negative experiences. I talk about negative experiences and questions that address that because law schools, whether they do a post-clerkship survey or just seek anecdotal feedback, really have been historically unwilling to even ask about mistreatment in clerkships, let alone share that with applicants. The messaging on law school campuses, including at my law school alma mater, is uniformly positive. That is an enormous disservice to students. But I speak with a lot of great judges who I direct students to apply to often, who are very supportive of the Legal Accountability Project's work, both state and federal, district and circuit judges. And I think clerking can be an excellent experience, but it's about identifying somebody who's going to create a positive work environment. And law schools kind of talk about this as identifying judges who are good fits. I don't know if I like that framing. It's more than fit. There are some judges who are creating a positive and safe work environment. There are some who are not. But it's also just about increasing the information. There are judges who provide feedback in a way that some students would respond to and some would not. There are judges who work their clerks harder than others, and you should know that going in. It's just about increasing access to information. It is about empowering every student and young alum with the information they need to make the decision that's best for them. And that's what it's about for me. I mean, yeah.
It's Aliza, you're a trailblazer in this space, right? And it's great to see that you've taken the lead in helping folks understand more the judiciary and where to go and what to do, and that you're advocating for some new laws. You mentioned it before our lightning round that you had submitted some testimony. Do you know what the current situation is with that legislation?
So it's kind of stalled in Congress right now, but I am hoping it will be revived in 2023. The Senate Judiciary Court Subcommittee knows that I am strongly advocating for a hearing on the bill. The House Judiciary hearing happened in March 2022, and it went well. The bill has 26 or more co-sponsors, 1 Republican, but Republican lawmakers expressed support for several aspects of the bill, particularly the Title VII protections. I wrote about this in the Harvard Journal on Legislation, the conservative case for the Judiciary Accountability Act. I think this should be very bipartisan legislation. Both Democratic and Republican judicial appointees mistreat their clerks. Both liberal and conservative clerks face mistreatment. Senate bill has maybe 6 co-sponsors. That does not represent the full scope of interest on this issue, but it just needs sustained attention. It's going to need a Senate hearing to get additional co-sponsors, to get additional attention. The federal judiciary leadership is a small but weirdly powerful and vociferously opposed lobby. Law clerks, less powerful lobby, but when I speak on this issue, I try to speak for them. This should be no-brainer legislation, extending Title VII protections to judiciary employees.
You know, things are tough to change, especially when they've been in place for so long. You know, lastly, where can our viewers follow you on social media, and where can they read more about your organization? And, you know, hopefully, when is this database going to be up?
Yeah, so social media, I'm on Twitter at Aliza Shatzman, LinkedIn, you can search by my name, Facebook. Our website is legalaccountabilityproject.org, and folks can go there, support us, join our mailing list. They can email me at aliza.shatzman@legalaccountabilityproject.org. I always love hearing from people, sharing their experiences. I spend a lot of time speaking with current and former clerks. The database, we hope, will go live for students in spring or summer of 2023. What I've tried to convey to law schools, and perhaps I haven't conveyed this fully, it is a symbiotic relationship between law clerk alumni from schools reporting into the database and the database going live for students considering clerkships. The database is a working prototype. We have excellent engineers working on the final build right now. And we're going to have some other entities in the legal community sending out the post-clerkship survey to fill out the database. But the onus is really on, candidly, law schools to partner with us. This is the best way to ensure positive clerkship experiences. This is the best way for them to demonstrate their commitment to making change on these issues. I think law schools have historically been part of the problem, funneling students into clerkships they know or suspect are bad, really pushing back on any efforts at transparency. They are the ideal vectors for change. And if you are a law student or a law clerk alumni or an alum of a law school period, you should urge your alma mater to participate.
Well, thank you, Aliza, for joining us at the CLEO Edge Podcast. We found you to be so informative. I know that our students and listeners will be happy that they actually got to hear from you and some of the things that you're working on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Have a great day. Thank you. Well, thank you again for joining us at the CLEO Edge Podcast. We're starting off our new year. So excited to celebrate our Emerald anniversary. If you haven't done so yet, please visit our website, cleoinc.org. That's CLEOINC.org. Consider donating today to our program and to our causes. We're working daily to diversify the legal profession in law schools around the country, and each dollar counts. So consider donating to us today and participating in some of our events coming up on our website. And please join our mail list so that you can always stay in contact with us here at CLEO. Thank you so much.